Welcome everyone to the second season of the Love, Truth, and Power podcast, where today we're discussing the S word, submission. Let's get into it.
How's everyone doing today?
Great.
Good.
Now that we're in the AC.
Alright, my name is Ashley and I'm your host today along with my husband Lawrence. Ruth is my mom, just so everybody knows who I am. And we're going to jump right in with the first question. How old were you or how long had you been married when you learned about submission, and what were your greatest fears about the S word? Whoever would like to go first, you go ahead and jump right in.
I'll go first. Got married young at 23. Didn't know anything about marriage, and definitely didn't know anything about submission, right? So I would say I probably learned about submission hadn't been that long ago, so don't judge me, y'all. Probably about 7 years ago. We've been married we've been together for like 15 years. So, because I grew up, my mom was a single mom, so I didn't have to see her submit to anyone. And my grandparents, they died when I was younger. So I did see submission there briefly. So it was about 7 years ago when I really started to understand what the S word meant for me. What about you?
I did not know what submission was. I didn't grow up in a household where I saw it. My grandmother was the head of the household. Miss Eppa called all the shots. And it wasn't until I was involved in ministry and going to like marriage retreats and marriage seminars or marriage like related ministry functions where I would hear submission, and then I was actually able to see. I was under a ministry where the pastor's wife taught on it a lot. And I rebelled for a long time. I wasn't married to my husband now, but I didn't see that growing up. To me, it looked like some type of control to me at that time. And so I learned submission the hard way. And I'm glad I did learn what submission was, and that it was, it's not a bad word. It's actually a good word. I think it makes a marriage successful, and so, but I didn't see it growing up.
For me, I saw it growing up, and I didn't like what it looked like. So I said, what I'm not going to be is that. I'm not going to be my mom, and I'm not going to be controlled by a man. So for me, it was a bad word, and I never wanted to do it. And when did I start? I didn't start. I was dragged. I kicked. I screamed. I shouted. I tried to find another scripture that superseded that one. Mm-hmm. Under what excuse and direction can I not submit? And I searched and never found it. But I want to say that was about 10 years ago I was introduced to it, and I probably started to begin to understand what it was probably about 7 years ago. Yes, when I was sweating.
Yes, 7 years ago when I got married and you switched up on me.
Yes.
Yes. What does submission look like in your life and practice, and what helps you practice submission?
I'll start where I ended. What it looks like to me and what helps me practice it.
Mm-hmm.
I think what helps me is that when I started doing it, I did it out of reverence for Christ only. And again, I'll tell a story that's in my book, which is that I started by serving my husband coffee, and I hated the entire process of it. And I remember telling my husband, hey, He said, because I had never served him a cup of coffee. The first time I did, he's looking in the coffee like, what is in it? And so I'm like, it's coffee. It's just coffee. And I really thought he thought that I was trying to poison it because I had never served him a cup of coffee. And so he said, why are you serving me coffee? And I said, I'm doing it out of reverence for Christ. And so my husband said, well, then take it to Christ then. And so, so what I learned was that in practicing submission, the more I served, the more God changed my heart about it. And then, so what helps me is remembering that practicing it and just trusting God it brings joy. It brings joy to me now to serve my husband. So what I learned in that transformation was the power of submission. And what helps me practice it is remembering that and remembering, that my husband's he doesn't yield it as a weapon. That's what helps me practice it.
Well, I'll go. Mine's look more like support. And by support, my husband did all these years in the military, and now he's doing something else, where he's away from home. And even though sometimes I'm like, oh, he's gone again, and I may not like it, and after I get over my little tantrums that I have internally, I'm still going to support his decision, even if I don't believe at the time it's the best decision, but I'm going to support him. So while he's away, of course, and some people may think that, but that's what you're supposed to do. But being a wife, and I'm a career wife as well, so sometimes our career has clashed, but being there to support that, but his job has always had him away, mine do not. I'm able to go to work, I'm able to come home, I'm there with the kids, I'm there to make sure the functions of the house are always there, even though it may have been my dream that, hey, during the pandemic, I work in healthcare, I could have been going to make a whole bunch of money in California somewhere, but I'm going to support his vision. So that's how, and I still serve him, like I'll fix his plate and stuff, but most of my submission throughout our marriage, even before I knew what submission was me supporting him, even when I was like, this isn't fun, he's gone again. And I'm stuck with these kids and still trying to go to school, trying to go to work, see patients, and all that different stuff. So that's me.
So I'm going to be the oddball here. Submission with me and my husband is that I may not like what you say or what you said we're going to do or I'm going to do. But I'm not going to rebel against what you said. I think submission, what it looks like to us is that I trusted God in him. And so it makes it easier for me to submit even when I may not understand what his answer is. Earlier this year I was given an invitation to do something ministry related, and I was very gung-ho about it, really excited. And we got home and he just bust my little bubble and said, that's not what we're going to do. So I said, oh, okay, all right, and so I thank God that I didn't do what it was that I wanted to do. And so submission, it saved me. It saved me from some headaches that we were going to have down the road. And so what it looks like is I know he follows Christ. And so I trust in his decisions. It looks like I don't care how long you've been saved or you've been in leadership or you've been doing that, at the end of the day, he's the head of the household. And so I like to say it jokingly, what he says goes, So it's a learning experience in that once we're asked to do something, I used to say, oh yeah, we'll be there. And so now I say, let me check with my husband and I'll get back with you and I'll let you know if we'll be there. I didn't at first, but I include him on everything, no matter if it's a major event to something minor as far as, maybe dinner with another couple or what have you. and I think as your relationship with Christ grows, it's easier for you to submit to your spouse because you learn that you learn to trust their relationship with God, and that they're the head of the household in the position they serve.
When do you struggle most with submission?
I'll go. When I hear it really well, for God, and when it's something that's not lining up with, I know we're supposed to be doing. I'm like, that is not what we're supposed to be doing. So I will, I struggle the most with that, like if I see a vision and this is what I, family should be doing, and sometimes he hadn't quite caught up to that, and then he like, we gonna do this, and I'm like, no, it's a terrible idea, and I have not, and I know some wives may say, well, I'll just let him do it, and he fails. Sometimes I haven't always been that wife to be like, no, we just look like, we gonna sit down, we gonna retalk, there's the pros and cons, so that's when I struggle the most, because even though I know he is the head, but if the head ain't hearing right, like you say, you leading me off a bridge. I'm like, right, there's a bridge right there. There's a sign back there that said the bridge is broken. We ain't doing that, So, but I still don't even necessarily think that's a bad thing either, Got some, but so that's when I struggle. That's when I'm like, no, that is not what we supposed to be doing, It's just,
With the kids. Between my husband and I is 10 children. He has 4 and I have 6. And so we have a Brady bunch. It's 5 girls and 5 boys. And so he says my boys are mama's boys. And I won't deny that. I won't deny that. But hearing that it's time to like our baby's going to be 18 in November, and I got this little saying in the house about him and these girls, and I'm like, no. He's like, okay, this is about to be 18. What you think? And so submitting when it comes to decisions about grown children, I listen, and so I'm better there, but still pray for me. The grandchildren. Submitting when he says, Taronda, these are not your children. These are your grandchildren. And he has to say that a few times. And then I say, but I'm her mama's mama. And he says, right, that makes you her grandmother, not her mother. And so I think the hardest thing in submitting in our marriage right now is when it comes to the grandbabies. Mm. I'm not there yet. Because I think they're my babies.
Yeah, I was going to say I feel attacked because...
Except that she would not use the word think they're her baby.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, no, definitely. That's the struggle, probably. I have one grandson, and that's it. How he rolls, we roll, and no questions asked.
That's it.
That's all I want. That's all I want.
Grandparents have rights in the state of Virginia.
Yep.
I'll send you the code later on.
Yeah. So, yeah, when it comes to my grandson, that's it. I'm listening to no one but Maddox. If Maddox wants it, that's the way it should go. And that's where we struggle.
So the second part to that question is, tell us a time when you did not practice or were tempted to not practice submission because you disagreed with your husband and it backfired.
Ooh.
Well, it don't backfire as often, because usually I understand. Which time? Okay, let me think. Y'all go first. And it backfired.
Mm-hmm. I think for me, I can't think specifically, but I have this like recollection where every time I tried to do it my way, every single time that I try to figure it out, no matter what it is. That's what I'm saying. I can't think, but I'm like, but I know that every time I do it my way, every single time, no matter whether I try to sneak, not talk to him about it, it's not really not submission because I'm not asking, so I'm just going to do it. And then it always either I get exposed or he finds out about it, or I always end up paying the price. Always end up paying the price. This is what I do. Here's a good example. Again, when it comes to my daughters, if they need something and I don't know that he's going to agree about it, because all three of our daughters are grown, and they need something or I want them to have it, I'm going to get it because it looks good in their place. And so, so sometimes I shop for stuff for their house, or sometimes I shop for stuff for their jobs, or sometimes I shop for stuff for their clothing. Lyric just started a new job, so I took her shopping, just to have new clothes for her. And so we were talking the other day, and Daryl's just saying something, and I'm like, no, she's good. And Daryl's like, are you sure? Because I'm like, no, she's good. I just took her shopping. And he's like, why did you take her shopping? Well, because she needed clothes. And I'm like, oh my God, why did I just tell her this? Or we were moving the furniture to my daughter's apartment and putting it together. Again, she's single. We're in there. Somehow, some way, it just came out. And he's like, you got her this furniture? And I'm like, did somebody say that? Who said that? Who was talking about it? Who threw me under the bus? And so, it always backfires. I always get discovered, something always happens, so I'm just like, it always backfires. There's never a time where it hasn't backfired. Yeah.
I'm always in trouble.
Yeah.
I'm probably the worst of these three ladies, of the three of us. I'm always in trouble, and it's always ministry related. My husband is very, very quiet, but he's a very wise man, and he walks in discernment. Like, it's almost like he can be in someone's presence 15-20 minutes, and he can tell whether or not they're good people, they're solid, or that's a whole mess over there, need to leave that alone. And so the superwoman I want to save the world will continue to deal with people after my husband has said, you need to cut them loose. I'm trying. It's not gonna. It's not good. They're not on the same level. They don't. His word to me is always, they don't have your heart. And he says that. He stresses that to me. He says, my job is to protect your heart. You are a giver, and you give your last. You give our last. You give what we have and what we don't have. And I'm not going to let you give out. Into a place where you're not going to get that back. Not so much monetarily, but just in that person's character or what have you. And so I have continued to have dealings or fellowships or business transactions with people my husband has said, cut them loose. And it has always backfired. It has cost me. I do daycare, and so one particular family, we know of them outside of daycare, and he says, not going to be good. Leave that alone. I said, it's just business. It's just business. Just childcare. They pay, their child's provided for, they go. And it never fails that their departure is always very rocky, very destructive. Staff is tore up, just mentally. People are in an uproar because of how either the behavior of their how they carried themselves. And so I never heard him once say, I told you so. But the look he has after it's happened, I would rather hear him say, I just told you so, because he's looking at me like,
He told you so.
I told you so, So I need to do better. I need to do. If that's an area, that's probably. If that's an area that's a big problem, is business wise or ministry wise. They don't fellowship with. You can't make. All his saying to me is, you can't make people who don't want to deal with you deal with you. You can't love the hell out of everybody. And so, he always says those people don't have your heart. And then he'll say, you'll learn one day.
So I thought of one time, right? and if my sister sees this, I love you, okay? So one time we were riding in the car, so my sister called me and she was fussing about something. Her and my mom got into it about something about my niece. And I didn't listen. My husband was trying to say, hear her out. So, I'm thinking that I already know what she's going to say. And I'm just going off and I'm just cutting off and I'm just going off. And lo and behold, that wasn't even what she was about to say. She was actually agreeing with me. So not only did I have to apologize to my husband, we like, listen to her. He's like, you just went full in and da-da-da-da. I said, because this is, I'm used to this type of stuff and I'm tired of it. And I didn't hear nothing she said. And by the time I let her speak and she started talking, I was like, oh Lord. So now I got to apologize to my sister. I had to apologize to him because I did not listen to him. And it was just such a simple fix, but I was not listening because I usually think I'm right. I don't get judge a carrot. I'm right. I already know this conversation. So before you even come here, I'm like, before you, and then I was so wrong. And there was a long ride home.
She said a long ride home.
I had to say, babe, you were right. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, you were right though. And sister, I love you.
All right, so we don't want any one-sided conversations, so we're going to ask their better halves to join the conversation and have a seat right behind your spouse, please.
All right, now we're doing the transition and we're bringing the fellas in. How y'all doing today?
All is well.
All right, glad to hear. So, fellas, I would like for y'all to take the time to introduce yourself, introduce your wife. I want you to share how long that you've been married, share a time where in your marriage that you had a particular moment where submission was not practiced, and how did that result in the household as far as for family, kids, and etc. Any early volunteers who would like to
I'm Sean. This lovely young lady in front of me and my wife, Taronda. We've been married almost 3 years now. September 21st will make 3. We've been together 5. Submission in the household not being observed, and how did the family, or what did it cost? I would say that was early on in our marriage. I'd been single for a very long time, and I'm gonna be quite honest with you. It was 16 years before we got together. I raised my children by myself, so I never had anybody that I needed to consult with on anything, because I was doing it all myself, or so I thought. But we got together and we had a couple of clashes when it came to home stuff, and it was basically because I was still in a single person's mindset. I think a big thing here is that people need to understand that when you hear the word submission, it's not just the woman submitting to the man. It's also the man submitting to his wife. His wise counsel in your better half. You might not always agree on everything, but they're not going to tell you anything in malice. They're not trying to hurt you. They're not trying to, take you out the back
I would
door.
say speak for yourself, but go ahead.
Wow.
I digress.
We've had some not so pleasant conversations, but it's all a matter of what are you going to do about it after it's done? Are you going to just call it quits, or you going to work it out? Like I said, we'll be celebrating 3 years the month after next. So we're trying to work things out. We still working things out. We're going to continue to work things out. I ain't going nowhere.
All right.
I'm Eric. I'm Lanisha's husband. We've been married for 13 years, been together for 15. I would say, we've had a lot of different moments where submission was an issue, but I would say we just had a discussion. I want to say last weekend, the weekend before last, she asked me a question. Do you think our marriage was ordained? And I was out on my walk, and not really didn't think about when she first asked me the question. So as I was on my walk, and I was meditating, praying and everything, and then I just started thinking about it. So I was like typing. I sent her this long text. I knew she was still asleep that morning. So, I think submission, when it comes down, we both have to mutually submit to the will of God. It's a teamwork effort. So if we as Christians, if we say we're Christians and we submit to the will of God, submission shouldn't be an issue, but we make it, complicated, more complicated than what it should be. I think when we look at just, I would use the example, the law authority. We all see the speed limits posted along the interstate, along the side of the road. But what most of us do, we typically go 5, 10, 15 miles over the speed limit because we're trying to get to our destination, in a certain amount of time to get there quickly as possible. So as long as we don't see the authorities, we don't have no respect for the highway posted speed limit. But when we see the authorities, we start to slow down. We start to pump our brakes because we don't want to get the ticket, because we don't want to pay that big speeding fine that we're going to get. So I think when we look at it from that perspective, we have to always think that this is God's authority, so He's always watching. So we should submit to one another. We should do the right thing, even when we think God's not looking, because He's always watching. So again, it's a teamwork effort. I believe submission is you respect me, I respect you, and we work together to make the marriage better.
All right. Good words.
What's the question again?
The question is to introduce yourself, introduce your wife, share how long you've been married, and to discuss about a time through your marriage where submission wasn't practiced, and what was the result with that within the family, etc.
I'm Daryl. This is my lovely wife, Ruth, and we've been married for 34 years. Submission was the issue for a long time until I came to Christ, right? It was an issue until my wife came to Christ before me. So it was an issue until I came, right? Until I understood, until I read Proverbs and how it told me how to treat my wife. So it was an issue for years. Now, was it in plain view? Did I know what it was? Or was I being rebellious? Or was she being rebellious? I don't know, because I hadn't come to Christ yet. But I know we had a lot of struggles, a lot of challenges, and we had 3 young kids. So again, us being from different worlds, different cultures, well, I say go, period. Until I understand what Christ called me to do, right? And we talked about submission. Again, when she gave me that coffee, I hadn't come to Christ yet. That's why I was like, give it back to Christ. Bring it in. So it took a while. I think she was like in for 5 years until, I started seeing some things and started reading. Because you got to read.
Yeah,
you can't believe what everybody tell you. Not saying that everybody is whatever. But you got to read for yourself to understand what the word's telling you and how to use it, right? How to bring it to you, what God's talking to you, because it's always personal. So once I did that, then I could see, because everything was an issue, especially with kids. Everything was an issue. Everything. When I say everything, I'm a soldier. I'm gone most of the time. 4 years overseas, deployed in the war. So when I come back, of course, my household changed. Right? She in charge. She was running things when I was gone. And again, we talked about that, and I had to come back in and ease my way back in. I'm not going to come back in, hey, you, no. But sometimes I did, you know that, and I didn't understand that. I know I'm back, you know, been downrange, deployed, I'm home, hey, what everybody doing around here? Come here, talk to me. You know, hey, the man back, I'm back.
Pose on.
Hey, yeah, pose my will. So again, and it took time. But again, once I came to Christ, and we were both in our walk, and again, it's a walk. You know, nothing's perfect. You're not perfect, so it's a walk. So we're in our journey. We're constantly in our walk. You know, even after 34 years. You know, but again, we listen and we love each other.
That's the key.
So,
All right. Good words. All right, fellas. All right. So, fellas, sometimes when you see submission, can it be as a way to yield authority over your wives? Or can it be misunderstood about the authority of submission can be upheld to be the responsibility of this authority?
I think most of the time, I think it's a misunderstanding.
Misunderstood.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, when we hear that word, we automatically think of dictatorship, and that's not what it is. You know, submission is, you know, if it's all based off love, then that's going to bring peace and harmony to your relationship. But if you think of it as from an authority position, then it's like, go sit down, right? Go grab me a glass of water. You know, take my boots off. You know, things of that nature. That's not what God designed. I don't think that's what the word is telling us what submission is. So I think it's a misunderstanding most of the time.
It's definitely a misunderstanding in my perspective. And it's really because of the fact that, like Eric said earlier, if you're submitting to the will of the God, the one true living God, then submission between husband and wife shouldn't be a problem. Another thing that men need to understand about submission is it's not like my wife said, trusting the God in you, which means she's trusting your leadership as the husband. She's trusting your judgment call, you know. And if your judgment call doesn't make sense, my wife is even, you might want to talk to some of your brothers about this. And then we can talk about this later.
Right.
I don't take that as an insult. Let me get some confirmation here. You know, because safety in a multitude of counsel. You know?
Amen.
When you surround yourself with genuine people, your wife included, first things first. When you surround yourself with genuine people and there's something that you're uncertain of, you shouldn't have an issue with being able to say, hey Frank, let me talk to you for a minute. Hey Eric, can I holler at you about something? You shouldn't have an issue. Especially if it's something that if you make the wrong move, it could tear your house up. You know? That's just my thought.
man, I think for me, wow. And I'm just going to be real about it. It just depends on the conversation we're having when submission comes up. Because we're discussing the kids or bills or something that needs to take place that I just don't agree with, then she'll come back, hey, all right, you being a Christian right now or what? I'm like, what? Oh, you want to go there? Right? And again, I'm like, hey, I won't talk about it right now. We'll talk about it later. but it's something that's pressing with her and not pressing with me, then sometimes, and I'll be honest, I want you to listen to what I'm telling you. I don't want to talk about it right now. But then I go and come right back. Yeah, okay. Sorry. Let's have a discussion. Right? But at that point, I want you to listen to what I'm telling you for a second. And maybe I have a alternative motive while I'm telling you to just, wait a minute. Give me 5. Give me 3 minutes. Let me think about it for a second. Sometimes I need time. So there ain't nothing wrong with that. Ain't nothing wrong with that. As long as I acknowledge it, right? So I acknowledge it, come back, say, hey, look, okay, let's have this discussion. And this is the reason why I say, give me a minute. Give me a minute. So, yeah.
All right, good wisdom passed on like this. All right. So, when does your wife struggle to practice submission, and how do you deal with it?
Let me go first. Let me go first. I'm going to say one word. Maddox. As my grandson. Now, I love my grandson to death. He is smart. He is brilliant. That's my dude. But every Friday is Maddox night in my house. Even though Maddox don't work. He worked all week. He ain't been doing nothing all week. He on summer break. And I'm grinding all week. And Friday nights, I'm trying to relax. Babe, it's Friday. Y'all know it's Friday? Let's go do something. Let's go to a movie. No. It's Maddox night. No, it ain't. Ain't no Maddox night. Yes, it is. It's Maddox night. So my grandson, and I get it. She wants what she wants for him. She talked about it earlier. And my thing is, my girls are grown. And like I always tell her, let me see my kids be responsible while I'm here, so I can help them, so I can show them, so I can teach them. You can't always hold their hand, especially with girls. She know how I feel about my daughters, and they know. This house is for them, because I know girls can get with them knucklehead boys when they out there in that world, but I want them to understand you always got a place to come back to. Dad's always going to be here, but I need you to know the difference when you're dealing with men. I need you to know the difference. So when I tell her, hey, let them go out there. They're okay. They know we're here, but they have to go out there and try. You got to be battle tested. When we talk about that, be battle tested with me here. That I can see you. And I know that you can make it in this man's world, and you don't need a man. You need Christ. We know that. Okay? But I need to know that she can make it, not rely. And to know that she always have a place to come back to with my kids. So again, I'm not being harsh and saying let them go out there and figure it out. Her, again, it's always gonna come up. Oh, you bought what? Why did you do that? Where did that come from? What's this in your trunk of the car? Where did this purse come from? Things everywhere in the house. Everywhere you look.
Trunk of the car.
Everywhere. And I'm like, leave them alone.
Closet.
Leave them alone. They know we here, but if you keep holding their hand, they know we here. Leave them alone. Let them figure it out. Her, it ain't gonna happen. She doesn't listen. I know it ain't gonna happen, but again, got it. I'll sit back and I'll discover it. It's gonna pop up somewhere. But again, that's our struggle with our kids, and we just see things a little different. And that's just the culture and the way that we were raised. I'm different. I've never put a hand on my kids a day in their life. And I got my behind beat unconscious constantly, and there was 7 of us, and I had a single mother. So it wasn't a beating that, it was beating like, hey, you need to do this, 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 this. But that's what I knew, right? She wasn't like that. She ain't never been tough. The school was across the street right there in the wood line.
Oh,
and she was here on the back deck, and she would drive to school. I'm like, why are you taking Dad's car to go to school? You're across the street. You know what I'm saying? So for me,
that's not the point of this conversation.
I wanted to discipline them all the time. But you know, it was a difference. So, and that's just the way we live now. My mother always said, the way you start out, where you go in.
Right. Powerful words.
I would like to point out that I appreciate that doesn't change about your mom. Thank you very much.
All right, so we were going to present the same question to Eric.
I think I usually for submission in our marriage, I think it really comes down to, I think we don't have a problem with submitting to one another. I just think we're just very critical of what each other's plan is or whatever the issue is. And I think, however, the feedback that we get from one another, sometimes we might not like it and we're not receptive towards it, and that tends to put a barrier between us. But far as that she would constantly tell me, like, before, is that what God telling you, or you're hearing from God? And my biggest thing with her is, she's very active and tell a lot of different things, and she will just go, and she will operate off very little sleep. But then me, I'm worried about her health. Like if you're sick, then you can't go do ministry. Now, and then that becomes a burden on me because I got to do more with the kids and everything. So I just I think we both have each other's best interests in mind. I just think the way it's presented, how it comes out, because we both like very alpha male, alpha female, so we can kind of clash sometimes. But I think for us, as long as we check each other and say, hey, did you consult with God first on this? And then that answers it. If the answer is yes, then there's no issue. I think I kind of nailed that one.
I'm blunt, so in other words, you can say he has a very blunt wife.
All right. Stage is yours, Sean.
She spoke on it already, really more so the children and every now and then the grands. I love our 10-piece with our 8 biscuits, 9 biscuits, 10 biscuits, however many you want to look at it as. With the daycare kids call us Nana Papa, we love them too. But, as far as our immediate family goes, like I've heard some of the kids say, I'm grown. And she'll tell you, I have this philosophy. If you can tell your parent you're grown, you're going to have to show me you're grown. If you can fix your face to tell me you're grown, you're going to have to show me. That means when you stumble, you're going to have to figure out how to get up. When you fall, you're going to have to figure out how to dust yourself off. Unless it's a situation that's dire. And we've run across that, and we've did exactly what parents do when it's a dire situation. But if it's just something simple like, oh, you got a late, you didn't pay your bill on time, I ain't gonna figure out how you gonna take care of it. Because remember, you said you're grown. That's my view, because I'm the middle kid in my house, in my family. So I had a brother that's older, a sister that's younger, and if the focus wasn't here, it was here. So I was just in the middle. I've been working since I was 15. Before I started working, I was the cut grass, shovel snow, rake leaves, wash cars. That was the hustle back in the 80s. So I've always been independent. I've always been the observant type. Like she tell you, this is the most talking you get out of me. This is the most talking you get out of me. I don't do a whole lot of conversation because I'm always watching what's going on. And in my walk with God, that power of observation and the power of discernment put together is why we discuss everything. And when I say everything, I mean everything. So when we have a conversation after we've been somewhere or we've attended an event or we've hosted an event, and we sit back and we be like, what did you see this? Yeah, I saw this, but did you see this? I missed that. This is like what she was telling you earlier about what if I sit back and I see something that don't sit well, and I say, cut it off. You know, I love my wife. My wife has a very huge heart. She loves people. But in loving people, you open yourself up to people who will try to suck the life out you. And like she told y'all, I tell her quick, it's my job to guard it. You know, I gotta, She was telling y'all earlier about a situation ministry-wise that she had been presented with. And when we got home, I said, Probably about 3 days later, we were having this conversation again. She was like, I'm glad you said no. I said, because it's a mess over there. Like, yeah, I've been sorry. You know.
But I was mad.
Until she saw the mess.
I was mad though.
Until she saw the mess. Once she saw the mess, she was like, okay. But again, it goes back to what we were talking about on the second question about your wife in submission being able to trust your leadership.
This is word.
Trust is key.
Yeah.
You know, whether you've been married 3 years, 13 years, 34 years. My grandparents were married 56 years before my grandfather died. You know?
Big.
Yeah.
That's big.
That's the only golden anniversary I've ever seen. After 50 is the gold. That was the only golden anniversary I've ever seen. My mom and dad were married 22 years before my dad died. My dad died a year before I became a father. So I didn't have my dad to guide me through parenthood like some people do. You know? So everything that I learned was trial and error. But by the grace of God, I'm here. My kids, well, we only have one kid that's under 18, and he'll be 18 in November.
All right. Continue with the wise words of wisdom. I appreciate y'all. Appreciate it. All right, we're on to the next question. So, I want you fellas, tell us what is the most difficult for you when your wife does not practice submission, and tell us how it impacts you, your character, your demeanor, and when she does and what she does about when she doesn't practice submission.
Oh, I can dive straight into that. As she would say, she's blunt, but at the same time, she can be a little belligerent. I would say I like to use that word. Hey, she's very, my wife is very. Once her mind is set, if she said and she said no, she ain't doing it. That's just what it is. And prime example, my daughter, our 6-year-old. If she say she is not doing it, she is not doing it. They are exactly the same. My son, you know, he's different. All right, he's kind of, you know, very passive. He's laid back like me. But for her, when she's that way, you know, when I tell her something, and you know, I get the little smart comments, or she roll eyes, with the facial expressions and things like that. So before I decide, you know,
not the one she's making here.
Before I get it, right, exactly. That's probably making it right now, right? So for me, what I would shut down. Right, I would shut down. Before I say something that I will regret, that I can't get back. Once I say it, I won't say it. So I'll just shut down. I won't say anything. So, yes. So that's the worst part of me right there. I can probably go a whole week. And I probably won't say anything. I'd be brushing my teeth right next to her in the morning at 05, and I won't just say anything. And I'll just say, "Have a good bye. Have a great day." I come home. Hey, how was your day? It was fine, good. And then I kind of hit the check in the box. And I won't say anything because I'm still mad process because I'm waiting on her to apologize. And it depends on how she said, you know, I might receive it. But if it doesn't come out genuine, then I'm not gonna receive it. Then I'm still not gonna talk to it. Now I understand what I have learned over time is by me shutting down and not communicating. That's toxic as well. It's very toxic. It is. But that's just my way. It works for me because I don't want to say anything in that I'm gonna hurt her feelings or I'm gonna regret I'm gonna regret saying that I can't get back. So I don't want to say. I'd rather not say anything at all and just let it be, and somehow y'all buffs out, so it comes back full circle, whatever. But she's very. Her mouth is.
Eric. Why Eric? This may be related after all. We are related.
He don't mean cuss words and stuff. Yeah, he means I'm just straightforward. I'm like a girly guy. Like, hey. Next question. Next question, brother. Brother.
Oh my God.
And I'll have to piggyback.
No, you don't have to.
Let me get
I
out
have
of
a choice. I have a choice.
here. Get out of this question.
My wife is very honestly blunt, whether it's gonna hurt your feelings or not, and it doesn't matter who she's talking to. She's gonna be honest with you about, and very direct. Through the course of our marriage, even today, she's the same person.
I'm sorry, Dad. What's her name?
What's whose name?
Mom's name.
Ruth.
No, when she's talking, what's her name?
Well, I call her mouth almighty, tongue everlasting. So that's what I call her. And I know, for me, I'm like Eric. I hear you when you're on your rant, and I'll shut down. I'm like, we're the same. We could be in the room. I get up and walk in there, and the only thing I'm saying to you, have a great day. I'm gonna get up, shower, get dressed, whatever, bop. She'll bring my coffee. I'm still getting coffee. She's gonna bring my coffee. She's gonna pack my lunch, and she'll hold out too. She won't apologize. She ain't coming back. It's not happening.
I'm not wrong.
See? And I know she's wrong. And we'll go back and forth, and we'll just stand our ground until one of us decides, which is normally her, because I'm going to hold out, be it right or wrong. Because now I'm upset. Now I'm upset, and I know I can be better. But again, in the heat of the moment, I got to be better. I have to be. I'm the leader of the family. So I gotta be better. But again, I'm human. I'm Christ-like. So, and it's growth. It takes growth. We have to grow. We have to grow together. Even though, like I said earlier, she became a Christian about 5 years before me. But our walks, I have to be parallel. I have to be with her. I have to get there. Okay, but we're still growing, right? And again, and in growth, there comes challenges, right? There's a lot of challenges. It is. With us, with kids, with work, we're still challenged by the world. We know that. We know that. And some things I'm going to agree with and do and say, and some things I'm going to bring home and discuss, she might not like. But she gonna address it. And nothing goes unaddressed. Nothing. Right, wrong, kids, grandkids, work, nothing goes unaddressed. And I gotta do better with her and be a better listener. I gotta listen. Right. I can't be a passive listener. I have to listen. And let her speak, not trying to. I know what you're about to say. I've been there before. We don't went down this walk, but I've learned to listen better. When I listen better, because then I'm not gonna react. Because when I react, you don't get a worldly answer. I'm going to respond to you because I thought about it. So I need to give you a response, not a reaction.
All right.
No response is the best response.
Not for 7 days. No,
In growth, there will always be growing pains. I'm learning how to be a better communicator. I wasn't always the best one. It's growing on as I'll continue to walk with God, because she's an ordained elder. And I'm just stepping out into ministry. So there's a lot of catching up I have to do, you know. But in that, I'm learning to, like my brother just said, listen better. Because I know I have a habit of, we've been here already. I have a habit of, I know what you're about to say. And I can say that because I know it's something I need to work on, I'm trying to work on. I ain't there yet. But one of the things about growing is the pains that come along with it. And one of the biggest growing pains is being able to acknowledge your faults.
Say that. Say that again.
One of the biggest growing pains out there is we can point fingers at other people all day long.
Yeah.
And that's what we see a lot of people do. They point fingers everywhere else.
Let themselves.
And you can put them in front of a mirror and they are blind Mellow Jelly Jr. They ain't see nothing. And that's just the truth. That's how come one of the biggest growing pains is being able to acknowledge where you're wrong.
All right, we're going to bring it back to the wives.
Okay, now we're ready.
Thank God.
Now tell us what you wish your husband knew about submission from your perspective that maybe he does not know.
Oh, okay. Yes, I'll go. And I think he may know this, but I don't think he know this. That because I think one of y'all mentioned that submission is mutual. So a lot of times I think that's a misconception that it's only the wives submit to the men, but Ephesians 5:21 is a mutual submission. So I wish not just my husband, but men in general would know that if you're leading me correctly, if you're listening to God, you're hearing from God, you won't have to worry about me. I'll be like, that's my boo thing. My man got 59. I ain't got to, what I'm saying? So I think for my husband, and I know some of the issues we had is that if I felt I wasn't being led correctly, then that's why it was maybe see some resistance. But as long as I know you hearing from God, I know you doing what's best for my family, you ain't going to have no word with me submitting. Like, I'm just going to be like, hey, it'll be easy. It's like really, it's easy when I know the leader, is there. So that's my answer. What is it?
I think I'm going to respond next because of that's something you said that prompted me. So, like my husband said, I was a Christian before he was, and I submitted to him totally. Like I said, the only thing that got me through the submission was it was just out of reverence for Christ. He wasn't a Christian, so he wasn't necessarily going to Christ, right? I was just doing it out of reverence for Christ. And so the thing that for me that I wanted him to know at the time was just how challenging it was to die to self, right? And to just do it like I told him when I took him the first cup of coffee, I do it out of reverence for Christ. I'm not doing it for you. And I think what I would want my husband and men to know in general is just how hard it is when you're not a Christian to submit to you, right? Because it does instill fear. But there's also a scripture for me that helped me, for me and my growth. And I think, to give reverence to Christ is that I had to read, you submit out of reverence for Christ.
Christ.
The very next scripture says, without fear of what your husband might do. So I had to do it out of reverence for Christ, and it didn't say he has to be a Christian. Ruth, you only submit to him if he's a Christian. It didn't say that. I looked for it in the Bible. I looked everywhere. What gives me an out? And so for me, what helped me was the very next scripture. You do it out of reverence for Christ. And I had to hold on to, without fear of what your husband might do, right? Because God will take care of me. If I'm doing it out of reverence for Christ, God has me. And for me, it was 5 years of submitting to a husband that wasn't a Christian. But what he did for me, and what I wish, all for me and my experience was, I submit out of reverence for Christ now. I don't care what people say, what people do, what my husband's doing, what he's not doing. It has nothing to do with other people. And it has everything to do with my heart for Christ. I submit, whether he's leading me wrong, whether he's leading me right, I have no fear in how he leads me. Because the God that has me says I should have no fear. I'm doing it for him and no one else. That's what I wish he would know. And again, for me, I think the most powerful thing, and God had to do it that way for me because of such a prideful woman that I was, is yes, I'm serving you coffee, and yes, you're saying, take it to Christ then. Right? And in that process, which is why I still serve him coffee today, it's a reminder of how God transformed my heart and transformed my marriage and transformed everything. Because I'm not afraid of you. I'm not afraid of what you're trying to do to me. If you're trying to do something to me, I'm not afraid. And I'm not afraid today. Not afraid tomorrow. I'm not afraid of people. I do it out of reverence for Christ. You can talk about me, don't care. Do me wrong, don't care. Don't care. I'm doing it out of reverence for Christ, so he's got me. And that's what I wish not only my husband, but people would know. I do it for you, regardless of how you lead me. I don't care. God has me.
Can I piggyback on something she just said? So recently, and I can't remember when, but it's been like a month or so ago, we got into this disagreement, and there was like no communication for a while, and she made me think about something. I remember I was taking my daughter to cheer, and I was in the car, and I started talking to God, and I said, God, because I'm the type of person, I say what I gotta say, and I'm done with it. I'd be like, you want to go have Starbucks later? Like, I don't hold grudges, because if I'm done with you, I'm done with you. Like, you ain't gonna be no in between. I'll talk to you 2 weeks later. So, and I was talking to God, and God kind of reminded me what she said. He said, regardless of how your husband is acting, you go back, you speak, you apologize. And I know it probably shocked him, right? So he came home, and we not saying. And at this point, I pulled a him on him, right? I wouldn't say nothing. Because normally I'd say something. I was like, no. So he came home, I was like, good evening, how was your day at work? And he looked like, who's she talking to? You know what I'm saying? Because I pulled a him on him. But God had to correct me and be like, that's not who you are. So I want you to go back and you apologize, even though I felt like I was right in the situation, but it didn't matter because it went back to what she said. I was, Eric, don't start this business. You have your time. Just see how you doing now. Anyway, back to y'all. Don't talk to the camera.
Back to the audience.
People block him out. So anywho, he was coming home from work, and I just spoke to him. I said, good evening, how was your day at work? And he looked like he saw a ghost because I hadn't talked. I pulled him on him, right? And which was very hard for me. But and then I told him afterwards, I was like, look, I had a conversation with God, and I have to change me. I can't worry about what you're doing, you know what I'm saying? Because my submission to him, even though I didn't agree with what the result of something was like she said, to God. And when it did that, what it did for me, it freed me. It's like it broke, it took me and my walk and my a relationship with God to another level. And I'm like, babe, I just hope you come up here with us, you know what I'm saying, come out. And then even in that, it was another part that it took us to just recently, even in our marriage, you know, when I was able to, you know, tell him the revelation. And I've seen a difference even since then. So I'm grateful. And like she said, it is a submission to God, even when you feel, even if he's a Christian. And sometimes, you know, Christian, we don't always act Christian-like. But so that was something that she just prompted me. It's, you know, my submission was to God, even when he was, you know, that part.
Off the record, you get coffee in the morning?
I don't drink coffee.
Oh,
Okay, then.
okay. Can I get coffee?
Miss Rose.
It was a struggle. It was a struggle. Don't do it for me.
Doing it for God.
Right. One cream, 2 sugar.
Yep.
Yeah, let me go last. The scripture says obedience is better than sacrifice. And so, something I would want, the question is something that I would want my husband to know.
Mm-hmm. From your perspective.
From my perspective, is my obedience to submit to him, is my obedience to Christ. My husband says his word for me is extra. I'm extra. And so I might have some theatrics going on after he says no, we don't break nothing like that, but I might be a little extra. Blunt like my sister. Straightforward like my sister. And I'm working on that. But I'm going to submit. And so my thing I want him to know, and he said it earlier, is I always tell him, check with your brothers. If you don't believe what I'm saying, if I don't line up with whatever it is, it's probably because I believe that it's something he isn't seeing the big picture to. And so with it being safety in a multitude of counsel, call, and the brothers don't have to be leaders in ministry. They don't have to be anybody's pastor. You can be brother around the corner, whoever. But to consult with someone else, because if I'm giving you some flack or if I'm being extra, it's not that I just don't want to submit to what you're saying. And normally we don't have any problems. I had Miss Ruth mentioned about Maddox, so I have 4 Maddoxes. and so what she said about Maddox, the grandkids, they run the show. And so, and I'm working on that. But if it's something I would want him to know, is that I'm not, if I give him some feedback, it's not
extra.
It's not extra. It's not extra, but I'm trying to get you to see it's not extra. But call somebody and see if, it might not be right. Oh, can I say one more thing? I think that submission has not been, I think the idea that we have submission, thanks be to God, comes through our relationship with Christ. But for couples who are not believers, submission sounds like a curse word. Mm-hmm. And so when you have a spouse that is saved, and you have one that is a believer, and you have another one that's not a believer, maybe a babe in Christ, trying to convey what submission is, I'm pretty sure sitting on the other side, it does sound like, I heard one wife tell me the other day it was slavery, and I don't look at it like that. So when I said I was doing a podcast on submission, and she said that's slavery, and that's not going on here. And I think if you want your marriage to be blessed, it should be something that maybe you guys need to study the scriptures together. Because submission, before you get married.
Or even not, right? We submit, like he started saying out earlier, we submit all the time to rules, to supervisors, to this, to that. We're not running the entire world. So we're consistently submitting. I can only speak to to me, it's my pride. It's just my pride,
Right.
right? I don't want to have to submit at home, and so it makes it seem like slavery, but it's not.
It's not.
It really isn't. I have found, again, it took me years, and he just said the whole story. Is for me, submission is powerful. It has been a powerful transformation to my heart first,
Yes, it changed your
and then to my marriage. It has, and it's a blessing for me. Part of what I gave up in submission was the budget, because I have control issues. So we talked about it. Said, okay, I'll hand this over to you, because my control over the budget was feeding my fear. I have to control the budget to make sure that these things are happening and getting paid. And I've always controlled the budget. So it's not that he wasn't paying things, it's that I didn't want to take a chance, right? And it was just feeding the fear that I had, so I have to control the budget. Part of my practice, what it looks like, it's not slavery. Part of my practice to stop having to feed my fear and control was to hand the budget over to my husband. He does an excellent job with it. The gift that God gave me, I don't have to worry about it.
Right. That's good. Well, I can tell
So
you.
that's not slavery. Is all I would say
Yeah.
to the person. It's
Yeah.
freeing to me to
Right.
know I'm
It's
taken
not
care of. I
slavery.
don't have to worry about any. I don't worry about any bills. I don't have to worry about it.
Everybody wins.
Yeah. I would say it's definitely not slavery when you understand it. When you don't understand it, and me and my husband actually kind of talked about this driving up, and nothing against the males, but sometimes, and for women can have ego issues and pride issues too, but a lot of times, and especially in different cultures, we gotta look at cultural, because there's different cultures where the male is like truly the dominating force, and the women have to submit in a way that appears to be slavery. So I think and they may even use religion a lot of times out of context, because they have not rightly divided the word. So it's definitely not slavery. Like she said, it's a gift. It does feel good when you don't have to worry about a budget or how your bills don't get paid or different things, and it's a submission, and it's glorifying God through your marriage and through your union. But I think when the slavery part comes, when the misunderstanding that the woman is under the male, per se, but that's a knowledge deficit, and even a knowledge deficit of the word, because you have to go back to the beginning of Genesis and even find out why the woman was created. The woman was created to be a helpmate. She was comparable. The word, some scripture says she's comparable to male. It didn't say she's under him. So that's why when you take it back to Ephesians, you see God, before he even talked about husband, love your wives and submit, he first said submit to one another, and then he goes down to the breakdown. Husband loves your wife as Christ loved the church, and so forth and so forth. And he used that love so many times. And going back to what my husband said earlier, once you learn how to love correctly, it does cast out fear, and then it also lines you up with who God is, which is love, and you see that mutual submission, that mutual agreement, which is a gift from God and not an act of slavery. But it's a knowledge deficit that most people have, and most people, including myself, we jump into marriages and we don't know the word the way we should. We definitely don't know. Sometimes we don't know ourselves, and we definitely don't understand our partner. So that comes with having more marriage counseling and stuff in the beginning, so you can understand before you take those vows on. So that's just my opinion.
I know we got a lot of sidebar. Was there anything else you wanted to add before we move on?
No, other than marriage is supposed to bring glory to God, and so in bringing glory to God, you would want your marriage to be everything that God is calling it to be. Not so when my husband is because not submitting brings resentment. And you got to look at, when you don't submit, how many other doors it opens. I listen to people all the time. I've been married 40 years. I've been married 30 years. Well, I've been married 3, and I'm happy with my 3. Because the length of time married doesn't equal the strength of the marriage. You can be married 50 years and have been a rough, rocky 50 years, And so if we bring in glory to God in our union, and a wife doesn't no submission, refuses to submit. Her refusing to submit just opens so many other doors. In you said it earlier about other nationalities, and so you hear conversations of, with these men only like these women, or this one because they submit easy or whatever, and so that's not true. It's that you've learned that submission is needed. It's required in your marriage to make your marriage work. And where there is not submission at all, there's some challenges. It brings problems. It brings a lot of chaos.
Last side note, I promise. So one of my jobs, I work as a psychiatric nurse practitioner. So one thing I teach my clients is that you have to deal with yourself, your own traumas, your own, because if you don't, that's why a lot of this chaos and confusion come in, because you'll have two unhealthy people coming together and they have this background and this culture and this, and then you trying to bring the S word in, and it becomes very difficult. So I know if you deal a lot of that stuff on the front end, you're not going to have a problem on the back, as much of a problem on the back end in a godly marriage, being submissive to one another. So get rid of the traumas, the mommy issues, the daddy issues, the rejection, the identity crises, whatever it is. You got to deal with that before you can even become one with someone. So.
And I don't think submission is taught in premarital counseling either. We talk about what's your career goal and where you come from and how many Sundays we got to eat at your parents' house and what your credit score look like. But I've never heard of submission being brought up in marriage counseling, and I haven't seen it in too many information, pamphlets or books or whatever. And so when a couple, after they say I do, and they start living this life, and you bring up submission, because it has not been taught and it's not talked about. That's why I think talk correctly. That's why this podcast is so needed, because you have marriage couples who will say, I don't know how to submit, or what is submission, or I ain't submitting to nobody. I'm married to him, but I ain't submitting. Or I'm married to her, but I ain't submitting. And so I think it's not taught or talked about.
Yeah.
All right, we hit on a lot of good points here, man. A lot of good points. All right, so with that being said, we're going to transition to the fellas, and we're going to give you the same question. I want you to tell us what you wish your wife knew about submission from your perspective, and that maybe she doesn't know now. And we're going to start with Brother Sean.
Did I get one of these?
I was a junior man. I don't know. I guess the only thing that I would say is in our conversations, depending on what conversation we're having, in any of them, I'm not saying anything to attack anybody or attack you or anything of that nature.
It feels like it, right?
I know that there are certain conversations that we have that she has a very personal outlook on.
Such as?
No sidebar.
I know there's some conversations that we have.
Oh my God.
That we have that she has a very personal outlook on. I know depending on what type of conversation it may be, she might feel like I'm coming for her, and it's not the case at all. As I've already said before, and she knows this, she tells people all the time, I'm quiet, I'm observant. And like we mentioned earlier, when you put the observation power with the power of discernment, you see things that some people, most people don't see. So no matter what we're having a conversation about, if it's something that's personal to her, I've had to learn to kind of step back a little bit to present the conversation a different way, because what I don't want is for what I'm saying to her to be taken out of context, you know, or taken the wrong way, taken as if I'm trying to chop a head off, anything of that nature, because that's not the case. We have a lot of conversations and we're good with the bulk of them. It's every now and then we have one where she might feel like, that's not what I'm doing. So in seeing that that's how the reaction is, I've had to learn, okay, let me approach this a different way so that I can kind of lessen that feeling, and we can have the conversation without the, you know, yeah. That.
Right.
Oh, God.
And we're going to transition to Brother Eric.
I'm probably going to take a different direction on this one. So I would say, I know my wife, she knows what submission is. She knows. I think for the one thing I want her to know is that if she actually, I would say, put my action behind it by displaying submission, that it would open up more doors, opportunities for her. Meaning it would make me want to just, you know, I want to give her the word, but that just becomes my primary focus, and not put boundaries on what I'm going to do and what I'm going to support when it comes to her. So, but I also realize in order for her to do that, I'm going to put ownership on myself. Meaning, you know, the word says that I'm supposed to love her the way I love my own body. And I love this soul of mine right here. So if I, regardless of her, through her flaws or whatever, her ups and downs, mistakes or whatever, I can't see those. I got to be able to move on from that and just not hold on to it. You know, I'm one of those, you know, like she said, I'll give her that she's great. I will hold a grudge. You know, I had this rule that when I grew up, it's like once you cross that line with me, you stay on the other side. You can't never come back. So that's something that over the years and as time went on, I had to kind of, you know, get away from that. And so I think I'm gonna answer the question by putting ownership on me. You know, I mean, is she gonna submit? Yeah, she's submitted to Christ, really, not me. So she's doing a reverence to Him, but I have to love her the way I love myself. You know, like Christ. I have to imitate His love in our marriage. So that's on me. So if she's not submitting, I'm the reason why. So I'll put the ownership on me, that husband.
All right. Good stuff. Good stuff.
So can you repeat the question again?
Yes, sir, I can. All right. So it is, tell us what you wish your wife knew about submission from your perspective that maybe she doesn't know now.
I don't think there's anything I can tell her.
Wise words.
I don't think, again, like he just said and they talked about, her reference is to Christ. I mean, I see her, she knows. It's not a discussion. I have no issues with submission and her submitting. None, because again, it's like she said, if I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, and I'm running this the way it's supposed to be ran,
No problem.
right? And my walk is with Christ, we don't have an issue. We're not talking about that. So again, like Eric said, it's up to me. Me. We're not even discussing that. If I'm being the person that Christ calls me to be. So no, it's really nothing I could say to her that she needs to know about how I'm feeling about submission. You know.
Well.
In Ephesians 5:21, it says to submit to one another out of reverence for Christ, as we already mentioned. What does a submission to one another look like in your marriage? And that is both for the husbands and the wives.
I would say it's respect and teamwork. Again, it has to be a mutual agreement that we're gonna respect each other. We're gonna work together as a team. You know, even though the scripture also say, you know, the man is the head, but the woman is also she's the helpmate. So she's the neck. I mean, you can't turn your head but so forth for that next stop that turn or direction that it's trying to go in. So if they both work together, you gotta have both. So for us, I guess what that looks like in our marriage,
We get the job done.
we get it done.
We get it done. And I mean that, and I seriously mean that. Like, no matter if we mad at each other, we gonna make sure our household is taken care of first, and make sure everything get done. You know, even if there's some misunderstanding along the way, nothing has never been undone in our marriage. You know, we keep that a priority. And we deal with the rest as time go by. So we just make sure, like I said, he was gone a lot, didn't agree with some of the things he had to go to, but we got the job done, and we continue to work through whatever is thrown. So it just support.
And it's a choice, we have a choice. And I think we both agree that we want to, make sure we get it done.
All right.
I think for us, for me, in submission to one another, is our primary issue now has transitioned to I want to outserve him, and he wants to outserve me. So and these are serious issues. Like, I anticipate where he's going to have an issue. So I want to avoid that issue, right? But he might be anticipating that I'm going to struggle with the same issue, so he gets ahead of me. So then we cancel each other out. Mm-hmm. And we find that we do a lot of that because we're trying to, make up, I think, for all the stuff that we've messed up, that now we try to out-service each other and outdo each other. And that causes issues for us because he's like, I already fixed it. And I'm like, oh my God, I fixed it too. And so now we cancel each other out. You know what I mean? Or we try to avoid something. And the other thing I think, I shared with Taronda, one of the things that I've learned is because we're very strategic, and I'm not an emotional person either. I am strategic. Every thought I have jumps to strategy. Right. Even with my daughters, if they're having an emotional issue, it's like, can't reach you. They already know I can't reach you there. I can tell you how to fix it. Let's wrap it up. Step 1, step 2, step 3, and you only have 24 hours to struggle and cry and get over it.
That is a fact.
So for me, because I'm strategic, one of the things that I think we lost along the way is learning how to have fun. So if we do fail, we don't always have to be so focused on achieving or accomplishing. It's, are we having fun along the way? Because sometimes we've lost the fun because we're so focused on getting it done. Let's get it done. Let's get it done for us. Let's get it done for our kids. Let's get it done for our family. Let's just get it done. And so I think because we're so focused, many times if we're not paying attention, we stop having fun with each other. And so for us, it's trying to remember, hey, we need a break. We need a break. We need to stop focusing on just doing. We need a break. And so, and we need to reconnect and just remember to have fun. So I think for us, submission sometimes has to just look like, I can't just be doing it out of reverence for Christ and doing it, and it always feels like a sacrifice. Sometimes I have to enjoy doing it out of reverence for Christ. So to me, that's what it looks like now, is our focus has to shift now to where we're just having fun while we're doing it.
Yeah, and not only that, the biggest thing for me when I see it, it always comes back to me being in love with her. Me taking it back and remembering, hey, I was crazy over her. And right now, through the process, as we're Christians, now I'm falling in love with her every day. Every day I'm trying to do something for her. Not because I'm thinking outside the box, it's because I love her with my heart. And I'm in love with her. Right? And I see that more and more every day. And I see my faults. It takes me back through the years. It's like, you knucklehead, boy. This could have been avoided a long time ago. But it took Christ, and it took my walk. And it took good people around you. Right? So my focus is to love her, to just be in love with her. And I think that takes care of everything else.
Okay, Dad.
Okay.
Talk your stuff, Pop.
I love it.
Yeah.
Something I just want to ask. I was just listening to them because like I do this. This is what I listen to people from all day long at work. And one thing I teach people about unforgiveness. We have to forgive ourselves, and then we have to forgive us. So, because the unforgiveness, and even if it's something small, it's try to creep in. And so, like, you can enjoy the moment because you're like, man, I messed up. It don't matter. Y'all, we're in love. Oh, Lord, if we didn't operate and forgive, Lord, no, we wouldn't be sitting here on this couch and on this chair right now. But that's something I had to learn in my marriage so that I could submit, you know what I'm saying, and that because we can mutually submit to other. I had to forgive myself for some of the things I may have said or done, and then I have had to forgive him for some past things he has said and done, so we can and still enjoy one another. So we can. I'm not thinking about, well, he said this and he told me this, because if I do focus on that, it's gonna rob the joy of how we supposed to be loving each other. It's gonna rob it. So forgiveness was a big key, and God had to deliver me from some unforgiveness that I had towards him, in order for, and that's when the submission light bulb went off. I was like, man, God, this is really about you, and in order for me to do what you want me to do, I have to walk freely in forgiveness and put aside whether I was wrong or am I right or whatever, so we can continue to walk in love and peace and unity in our home. So that was a big key for me in our marriage.
And when you're loving like that, it diminishes the distractions. The distractions in your life, the challenges, right? It diminishes that because your focus, if you're loving from your heart, that's your focus. That's what you're looking at. The distractions, they go away, and you ignore it, and you move on. That's just my take on that.
Mr. Graham?
Oh,
I think it look like it's definitely teamwork. We make it happen. We always say Team Green. No matter what, we make it happen. Whether it's on his end or my end or however, it's always a common goal and what has to be done for our family. We make it work, and that's with the help of God. I think what it looks like is trust. I trust you. At the end, I can't. It would be challenging to submit if I don't trust. And so I think with us, the biggest thing is I trust him. We always say, the kids don't like to hear us say, but if I died today or tomorrow, I trust that he will take care of things. I trust him to take care of things now, and I've received that from him. I don't have as far as husbands submitting to the wives and wives submit to husbands. There's only one thing he does not submit. I won't say he won't, but he doesn't. And he don't write nothing down. And that's been us for 5 years. Write it down. And I said, we're not teenagers. Write it down. So I don't have a problem if it's something he's unsure and he says, I turn it over to you, or you make the call, or he'll tell somebody, let my wife make the call, and he allows me to make whatever decision. I receive that as his trust, and that is mutual trust for us both. But we talk through our challenges. He's patient while I'm extra through the challenges, and other than writing things down, we don't have a problem.
All right, we're gonna roll into one more question. Okay, so we're gonna start off with, what are your greatest triumphs as a couple that you relate directly to practicing submission?
That we're sitting here today.
I'm gonna take that one. I'm gonna start.
I'm gonna wrap
Sure.
them.
I'm gonna start our house rebuild. Cause she was ready to give up on the house.
I'm not gave up.
Yeah, I'm talking about done. We had looked at one house and the deal fell short, and she was like, "That's it." The house hit my phone. We had a conversation about it. Somebody fed her some false information about the house. They tried to tell her that they were selling the house $30,000 more than what they were selling it for.
Mm.
So, called our realtor, ran through. We signed the paperwork and got the keys 4 days before our anniversary. So, she like I said, she was done. She was done. I mean, done. I said, well, I'm gonna call Laura. Do what you gonna do. Okay.
That's a lot. That's a good try.
So seriously, I was serious. Us sitting here today, you know, like he said, I can be stubborn. Well, not. I don't even say stubborn. I just know what I just know. You know what. And he can be. Don't laugh at me, Sean. Don't laugh at me, Sean. And then he can too. So there was a time when we was just like, we ain't doing this no more. Like, you know, and I'm very independent woman. You know, he's a very independent man, and it was so easy for us to be like, woo, you know, just go. And but God, you know, God came in and, you know, and touched both our hearts. So like literally us being here today and excited about being, like, I'm excited about being married. Right? I couldn't always say that. I was like, oh Lord, you know, he's still here, you know. But but I'm excited, you know. We're in a totally different place, and it was because of submission. It was because of understanding the will of God and recognizing the enemy. You know what I'm saying? We have to recognize, you know, even when it is your spouse, it's really not your spouse most of the time. We don't fight against flesh and blood. So our greatest accomplishment is that we're here. We're looking forward to, you know, 15, 20, 25. You know, honestly, I don't want to spend my life with no one else but him, you know. And there was a point where I wouldn't say that. I'd be like, Chaz, man, you got somebody to take on, you know, somebody want, you know. But, and I jokingly say that to say it took learning about submission. It took learning about myself and, you know, submitting to the will of God. And I'm grateful that, you know, we stuck it out, and I'm excited about our future. So we fought.
Like you said, we're both career individuals. We both achieved a lot within our careers. I mean, we have many accolades. You know, you name it. I mean, we pretty much done it. But one thing I didn't realize, and I will have to open it to me, is, you know, the devil don't want to see that. You know, so we have to have each other's back. I have to have my eyes open to see it, and I also have to. If I'm not hearing clearly when she speaks, I need to be able to hear her clearly so we can make a decision. Because again, we're a team, and if we don't work together as a team, then there's always going to be some friction. So, but we have a beautiful family. I mean, we came from two different walks in life, but I mean, even some of the bad experiences and times we've had, I wanted to change it for work, because we want to be where we are today, and that's a testimony to somebody down the road that may be at that breaking point where they want to give up. So that's where we come in to be able to give our testimony of where we were. You know, so it's, you know, like I say, it all goes back to choice, mutually submitting to one another. You know, if we don't do that, then it's not going to work.
What's the question again?
What is the greatest triumph through your marriage that you witnessed through submission?
For me, I would have to say my kids. I would have to say my kids. I got all girls, and to see the transformation of their mother, this woman that sits here, that's, you know, she's a professional too, right? She's bold, she speaks her piece, she says what she wants, and my kids, they're not blind. They've seen the struggles that we have through the years. You know, they hear the conversations, the arguments, the things that take place. But to see the transformation of their mother and to see the transformation of us, not only as their parents, but as a couple, you know, two individuals that love each other. So to me, we're always mindful of them. I am all the time. You should know that. So yeah, I think for me that was the biggest. Yeah, that was the biggest for me. My girls, and then just being a witness to everything. You know, and it's funny. You just try to be obedient daily. Can you be that? Can you be that? Can I be that? It's my goal.
Yeah, I would say for me, the greatest triumph is, like she said, is 34 years is easier said than done. Because I would have never anticipated what was coming. I would have never anticipated the things we've been through, never anticipated how prideful, again, I will say that what I keep calling wild women in blue, winning women in blue, is that a most prideful woman I have never laid eyes on than myself. Not because I have a reason to be. I'm saying prideful and disobedient. I knew so much in my brain. You know what I mean? And that it was a gift to everyone around me that I was in their presence. That's how I walked and carried myself. It is my presence people should be grateful for because I know so much. You have to just be so, you know, a friend of mine told me you can't always be right. And what I said was, it is exhausting, but if I'm always right, I'm always right. What else is there to do, right? But impart my knowledge. And that my husband lived with that, right? Again, I always say, it speaks to my husband's confidence. God knew who to bring into my life. Any other person, like my mother said, anybody else would have walked away from you a long time ago. Got it. I would have walked away from you a long time ago too. So the fact that we're sitting here 34 years, and as I hear my husband say that, and you have reviewed my book, so I'm not lying, I love him more every single day. And I always think, how is that possible, God? How can you love a man more every day? Like, what can he do tomorrow where I'm going to love him more? But I think it was submission. It was just surrendering, not necessarily to my husband first, but to God. To surrender to God. What he gives you back is beyond what you can imagine. So for me, triumph looks like when two people come together and you mess it up in every single way that you can. You cross every boundary there is to cross in a marriage. We have crossed it. Every one of them. And to be so in love right now is to God's glory, because he taught me what it is to practice submission. That is our greatest triumph. That I can love him more today than I did the day I married him. It's just because of submission.
I think our greatest triumph is restoration, because when we first got together, not everyone, but people will come to me and say, and we share our testimony, so I know he's good with that, but I would get phone calls. You're about to marry a drunk. I had so many phone calls from so many people, so many classmates, co-workers. You don't want to marry Sean because he's a drunk. And I just remember playing that over in my head like, we all are something until we meet Christ, you know. And so I just remember people just kept telling me, he's going to be a drunk forever. And the only person drink mine is me. But, you know, even if we have like a glass of wine, okay, whatever. And so I think the biggest triumph with us both is restoration in our lives. It's submission through Christ and watching the manifestation of our obedience to Christ bring restoration to us. And so, you know, just watching all of the things that I'm pretty sure my family told him I was, and all the things his family told, you know, me that he was, and watching us submit to Christ, submit to one another, and to try to line our marriage up to be what it's supposed to be, and watching just, you know.
And watching everybody have to eat their words.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say it like that.
It's definitely, you know, restoration and with submission and is watching God bless you because of your submission. You know, and so when you look at marriages that there is no submission, as opposed to couples where there is submission. The Lord is a rewarder of them that diligently seek Him. And so in your marriage, you're diligently seeking to obey Him by, like you said, serving your wife. It may be coffee in their household. It may be, I don't know, he like Minute Maid fruit punches in my household. You know, but just in watching, like he said about the house, I was done. I didn't want to see another. I took the Zillow app off my phone. I blocked the realtor. He told you I was extra, so I blocked her. I didn't want her to text me no more. I unfriended the other realtor. I was done because it was a seller's market, and so with them pricing houses $30,000 and $40,000, and the
offering up $50,000 over
Yeah.
and so we're going to, you know, the house that I really wanted. Once we were outbidded on that house to have it that one day. I walked away. I didn't say the realtor goodbye. I got in the car. I was just done. And I just said, look, maybe after the holidays, but not right now because it was so mental. Not thinking that when one is weak, the other one is strong. And so even though I had given up, he still had this, no, I'm going to put my family in a home. This is what we're going to do. And so I said, okay, well, you do it then. Yeah, which is probably where God wanted me to be anyway, you know, is to throw my hands up. Because submission is surrendering. I surrender, you know, I surrender however. And so watching the restoration and the blessings that come from submission and restoration.
Final question. What is the power of submission, the truth of submission, and how does submission sustain love?
I would say love is the key to submission, because you first have to love God, you know, then love, you know, like you said, that's the greatest commandment, is love. Love Him, then love your neighbor as you love yourself. So my closest neighbor is my husband. So in just being who God requires and what He requires me, that allows me, because even like she had said something earlier, I was when love is a driving factor, even if they're not acting right, you start to see still what God, you start to say, okay, well, they're not doing this because there's a hurt there. You start to see them a different way versus they're just acting a certain way. So the love, I would say, is the strongest factor, you know, in submission. That would be my answer.
I would say working together, by submitting to each other, you're working together, and by you working together, that presents a unified front. So that shows to, you know, the world that together that you guys are on the same page. You know, the mission is the same. you're a team, and you love one another, and you're submitted to one another. You can't, if you can't see it in your own marriage, I feel like you can't go out and tell somebody else about submission and what a marriage looks like if they can't see that in your marriage, because they see it in your marriage. And that someone's gonna probably come to you because they think that you have it together. You know, you're not gonna go to a car lot and purchase a vehicle if you think they don't produce, sell quality cars. You know, you're not gonna go to a living lot and be like, well, I'm gonna go here, but you like these cars don't look that good. The prices are $5,000 over what it like is worth. But when you go on a brand new car lot, you're like, oh man, you ain't worried about it, Warren. You know, like this car brand new. It's got 10 miles on it. I'm not worried about it breaking down or anything like that. So you trust everything that salesman is going to tell you about the car. A lot of times you're so excited about purchasing that vehicle that you're not listening to any of the features that the salesman tell you how to operate the vehicle. You just like, man, I can't wait to jump in this car, ride to show my friends and everything, and pull off this lot. He's telling you all the details, all the paperwork. You just sign away. You ain't reading nothing. He just telling you just a little snippet. This what they say. You're like, yeah, don't worry about it. I'm good. All right. You jump in the car, you gone. You don't know how to turn on the radio, how to set in the preset, but you figure it out. So it's the same thing. So if your marriage looks like, like a nice car lot, I bet better y'all shift to this. One of my wife should tell my pet peeve is my yard. I'm my front grass. I take pride in my front yard. That grass, I want green grass. And she'll tell you, I got it down to over the years I've messed it up, put down too much fertilizer, stained it, burnt the grass and everything. Put new sod down. I mean, I'm serious about it. But now I told Alicia, I said, I think I got it right.
You did.
And so you know what? And I think my marriage represents that. I put the hard work in. And I was learning what submission is for myself, submitting to her. So when I look at my grass, I'm like, that's a reflection of me. So it's a reflection of my house, my home, and everything. So that's. I guess that would be my answer.
Repeat the question again.
What is the power of submission, the truth of submission, and how does submission sustain love?
Power of submission, I think, is trust. I think you have a hard time submitting to someone who you don't trust. And I think a lot of people marry another person without trusting them. You marrying because somebody was pregnant, or you marrying because the money, or I think people marry for all the wrong reasons, and then trying to make it work afterwards. You find out that you've married somebody that you don't trust. You don't really love, and knowing the difference between love and lust. But I think the power is trust. How does it sustain love? I don't want to put what I read. I learned a whole lot in her book, but I'm going to use coffee as an example. I think every time you serve, every single time you serve, it's all, how we pray in the morning, Lord, let me decrease as you increase in me. I think every time you serve, you are decreasing to becoming more and more of serving your spouse, loving your spouse. And especially when you have to serve in bad times or in trouble times or get them nerves times, or So every time you have to serve, I think submission causes you to deny yourself and to esteem your spouse regardless, and that helps to sustain love. I love you regardless. And it's a model. Submission to me is just a model of what Christ did for us. Like he asked his Father, do I really have to go to Calvary? Right. And he like, hey, can you take this assignment from me and give me something else? But not my will. Every time for coffee or Minute Maid in your case, and time for fruit punch, it's not my will. It's God's will. And so I think that's what sustains the love is that you're serving, and every time you serve, I know me, probably every time going up each one of them steps, I'd be like, Lord, I'm really doing this. I'm really doing this. I got to do this. You know, it's getting your mind to be obedient to sustaining your marriage.
The power of love is trust. Like we were on the same sheet there. You love God, you trust God, you submit to God. If you love your spouse as God and Christ love the church, you love your spouse, you trust your spouse, you submit to your spouse. The truth in submission is liberating. It's liberating.
That's good.
How does it sustain love? I think everybody that already been around on that one. Your servitude, and when I say servitude, I don't mean like bondage, slavery, or anything of that nature. Just the fact that you're willing to serve. The fact that you're willing to serve your spouse is what builds the love. It reinforces it. That's
The power of submission for me is the power that it was for me is that I took out everything that the world says it is. It's not about me being independent as a woman. That's not true. That's exhausting. It's not true that I'm strong and I have to be strong to be a woman. Not true. Not that I have to always be heard. Not true. Everything that the world told me that I was supposed to be as a woman, independent, in case a man leaves you, that's fear. Right? Strong, no, that's not for me. That's for God. All I need is courage. Don't need to be strong. Everything that the world told me I should be as a woman was exhausting. The power of submission was to live without fear and be obedient to God. It was so relieving. The truth of submission is that it is hard to die to self every day, because you have messages every day that tell you the opposite, right? No, you should be independent. No. What if he does that? What if he does that? What I had before, right, is have your own account just in case. Have your own stuff. It's living all that fear stuff. It robs you from peace and joy. So the truth of submission is that it brings you peace and it brings you true joy. And the love of it is that when you give it freely without expectation, which is what I had to do, is just do it. Just do it. And the more I did it, the more I practiced submission, the more I died to self, even though it was hard, the more whatever, the more I fell in love with my husband. So it killed all that. I applied, be Corinthians 13, be patient, be this, be that, don't hold records of wrong, all that stuff. I applied and measured love by, do you do this, do you do that, do you do that? And that wasn't for him, it was for me. God was calling me to love like that. You, Ruth, be patient. You, Ruth, hold no records of wrong. You, Ruth, you, I'm talking to you. So for me, the truth of love is that in submitting, the more I gave it away, the more I submitted, the more I gave up control, the more I fell in love with my husband. That's the truth for me.
That's good.
For me, the truth of submission is that there's no negativity connected to that.
That's good.
The way the world sees it and the way the world projects it. right? Growing up, I mean, you hear that word, it's like, what? You ain't doing that. The power of submission is, for me, it's the love that it generates. For me. And the love of submission is that we don't have to discuss it anymore in our household. There's no conversation about submission anymore. It's not necessary.
That's good.
So thank you so much, everyone. That was the last question.
That was deep.
Thank you so